Welcome everyone to my Clorinde guide. In this guide, I will go over Clorinde's kit, her playstyles, artifacts and stats, weapons, teams, and finally Constellations. Keep in mind that Clorinde is not officially out yet, and all gameplay in this video is coming from the 4.7 livestream. And without further ado, let's get into her kit. Clorinde is a 5-star electro damage dealer. She wields a sword, scales on attack, and has a crit rate ascension bonus. Similarly to Arlecchino, Clorinde also deals with the Bond of Life mechanic. Clorinde's normal attacks deal 5 hits of physical damage and are not a major part of her kit. The majority of Clorinde's damage comes from her elemental skill. Using Clorinde's skill allows her to enter the Night Vigil state. In this state, you have the option of either attacking with Clorinde's normal attack or elemental skill, both of which will deal electro damage that cannot be overridden. All damage dealt in Clorinde's elemental skill duration, Night Vigil state, is considered as normal attack damage. Using normal attacks, Clorinde will use her pistol to deal electro damage. This attack is called Swift Hunt. If the current bond of life on Clorinde is less than 100% of max HP, each pistol attack will grant a bond of life worth 35% of max HP. When the bond of life is equal to or greater than 100% of max HP, attacks will no longer grant a bond of life and will deal less damage than before. In addition to these effects, once every 10 seconds when Clorinde's pistol attacks hits, she will deal Uzia-aligned electro damage. Using the elemental skill, Clorinde will perform a lunge attack with her sword, dealing electro damage. When there is no bond of life on Clorinde, the lunge attack will deal the base amount of damage. When the current bond of life is less than 100%, the damage and AoE of the lunge attack will be increased, and Clorinde will also heal HP equal to 104% of the current bond of life percentage. When the bond of life is equal to or greater than 100% of max HP, the healing, damage, and AoE will be further increased. Additionally, while Clorinde is in the Night Vigil state, she will not be receiving any healing. Instead, 80% of healing received will be converted into a bond of life. The Night Vigil state has a duration of 7.5 seconds and a cooldown of 16 seconds. And moving on to her burst, Clorinde will deal AoE electro damage and grant a bond of life worth 114% of max HP at talent level 9. This burst has a cooldown of 15 seconds and an energy cost of 60. Now that we know what she does, you will likely want to start most rotations with Clorinde's burst to gain a bond of life. Then cast your skill to enter the Night Vigil state and perform a lunge attack to consume the bond of life and deal damage. Then use Clorinde's normal attacks to gain back the bond of life. Once you perform 3 pistol attacks, or reach a bond of life worth 100% or greater, you can then use Clorinde's lunge attack to deal as much damage as possible, and repeat the process till the duration runs out. Moving on to passives, for Clorinde's first passive, when any party member triggers an electro-related reaction, the electro damage Clorinde deals in the Night Vigil state is increased by 20% of attack for 15 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times, and each stack has its own duration. The maximum bonus achievable this way is 1,800. This passive is a huge part of Clorinde's damage. Clorinde doesn't have the highest multipliers. To make up for this, her first passive grants a bonus, which is added to her base damage, which then gets multiplied by crit, damage bonuses, and other variables. To fully cap this damage bonus, you need 3,000 attack. But that is not an important target to reach. As for Clorinde's second passive, once the current bond of life is over 100%, crit rate will be increased by 10% for 15 seconds when the current bond of life over 100% increases or decreases. This can stack up to 2 times, and each stack has its own duration. So you first must have a bond of life worth 100%. And once you do have the required bond of life, you will gain a 10% crit rate increase when the current bond of life increases or decreases. And you should be able to maintain this passive during combat. The extra crit rate is very helpful, but it also makes it easier to overcap on crit rate. Clorinde has a crit rate ascension bonus. Add to that an extra 20% from this passive, and you're already starting with 44.2% crit rate. So, with weapons like Primordial Jade Cutter, you might easily overcap on crit rate. Additionally, as part of the second passive, while the buff is active, 100% of healing received will be converted into a bond of life, instead of the base 80% of healing. And lastly, Clorinde has an exploration passive, where she marks the location of resources unique to Fontaine on the minimap. Clorinde, being an Electro character, has many different possible teams. Quicken, Hyperbloom, Chevreuse Overload, and Electrocharged are just a few. As an Electro damage dealer, she is not really necessary for your account, and you don't have to get her if you're already satisfied with your Electro characters. Clorinde has low multipliers as previously mentioned. This makes playing Quicken a good option. Since Quicken is an additive reaction, the bonus reaction damage gets added into Clorinde's base damage, which then helps you deal more damage and make up for the lower multipliers. As an Electro character, she can also be played in Hyperbloom teams. Although do keep in mind that, unlike some other characters, she doesn't really have any sort of elemental mastery scaling in her kit. Quick Bloom teams should work well with Clorinde, as these teams often focus on your Electro damage, with the blooms as an added bonus. And since Quick Bloom teams don't need a lot of Hydro to bloom consistently, you can even run Furina as your Hydro character. Clorinde should also be able to trigger Furina's healing passive, as Clorinde should be able to heal multiple times by using her lunge attack in the Night Vigil state. It still wouldn't be comfortable healing for the whole team, but the trade-off is sometimes worth it. You can also run healers with Clorinde, as she converts healing into a bond of life. You also don't have to stick to Dendro teams. Chevreuse Overload teams should also be competitive and very strong. Electro Charge teams should also be viable, especially with the many strong Electro and Hydro characters. Hypercarry teams are also an option, among many other viable teams with Electro characters. Overall, Clorinde looks to be another strong character, with a lot of possible options for teams. And just as a reminder, the Electro damage Clorinde deals in her elemental skill state is considered as normal attack damage, so weapons and artifacts that increase normal attack damage will be good on her. When it comes to Clorinde's talent priority, you will first want to level up her skill, then burst, and lastly, normal attacks. Although the damage during Clorinde's Night Vigil state is counted as normal attack damage, it has its own multipliers tied to your elemental skill level. Leveling normal attacks is also optional, as they don't contribute to overall damage. When it comes to artifacts, Clorinde has many strong options. Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy should be Clorinde's best in slot, as it increases attack and increases damage dealt by 18% for 6 seconds, when a bond of life increases or decreases. This can stack up to 3 times, which brings the total damage bonus to 54%. Clorinde, being a bond of life character, can use this set pretty well. Thundering Fury is another great set. Through the 2-piece bonus, this set provides a 15% electro damage bonus, and through the 4-piece bonus, increases reaction damage, and when the character wielding this set triggers these elemental reactions, skill cooldown will be decreased by 1 second. This effect can trigger once every 0.8 seconds. So, with Thundering Fury, you should be able to lower your skill cooldown, allowing you to go for more rotations during a set amount of time. One single rotation would deal less damage than Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy, but on average with additional rotations, Thundering Fury should be right up there with Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy. Both sets are very close in terms of damage, and you could choose between either set or which has better substats. Marishosi Hunter should be usable on Clorinde if you have Furina in your team to drain HP. Clorinde should be able to heal herself consistently, which can allow you to keep Marishosi Hunter's crit rate buff active. Although do keep in mind that there may be instances where you would start with low HP and won't be able to keep the crit rate buff active all the time, which might lead to this set being inconsistent. While I don't recommend it, if you're running Furina in your team, you can use this set, and if you're able to consistently keep the crit rate buff active, Marishosi Hunter should be high up there in terms of damage, but do keep in mind that it's probably going to be inconsistent, and you're already starting with 44% crit rate from Clorinde's kit, which can make you overcap on crit rate with Marishosi Hunter. Other sets such as Gladiator's Finale, Echoes of an Offering, and Gilded Dreams should also work pretty well. And the difference between each set will likely be up to substats. Gladiators and Echoes of an Offering work on Clorinde since the damage she deals in the Night Vigil state counts as normal attack damage. You can also mix and match many different 2-piece sets, such as attack and electro damage. And by the way, this ranking here is for a Quicken team. In teams where Elemental Mastery wouldn't matter as much, such as a Chevreuse Overload team or an Electrocharge team, Elemental Mastery and Reaction buffing sets won't perform as well. Clorinde generally prefers attack over Elemental Mastery. In teams, aside from Quicken, Echoes of an Offering should be better than Gladiator's Finale. Since the Echoes of an Offering set buff is additive damage, and with the Quicken reaction also being additive, you will be facing some diminishing returns. Because of that, Echoes of an Offering should perform better in other teams compared to Quicken. Moving on to stats, let's first talk about energy recharge. Running Fischl with Clorinde is going to help out a lot in most teams, and in most cases I would recommend running them together. In a Quicken team with Fischl, you will need around 110% to 120% energy recharge to burst consistently. If you have a character with Favonius on your team, you can comfortably go for around 110% energy recharge or lower. If you don't have Fischl in your Quicken team, you might be looking at an energy recharge requirement of around 140%. In most other teams with Fischl, around 140% to 160% energy recharge is going to be sufficient. Without Fischl though, you might be looking at even higher energy recharge targets, up to 180% energy recharge. You also don't have to burst every rotation, so you don't need to stick to these requirements. As for main stats, for your Sands, you will want to go for attack most of the time. In a Quicken team, Elemental Mastery is not that far behind, and you can use an Elemental Mastery Sands if it has much better substats. The same also goes in a Quick Bloom or Hyper Bloom team, although there are some scenarios where using an Elemental Mastery Sands can be better, such as when you're using a weapon like R5 Finale of the Deep, where it gives you a lot of attack to a point where you might overcap on Clorinde's first passive bonus. As for your Goblet, Electro damage bonus is almost always better than attack. The reason for that is because Clorinde has low multipliers, so increasing attack is not going to be as impactful as increasing damage bonus. But that is not to say attack is bad. Attack is still important for Clorinde, but having damage bonus on your Goblet is better. Overall, Electro damage is usually better for Quicken damage dealers. As for your Circlet, go for either crit rate or crit damage, whichever you need more off. But do keep in mind that Clorinde starts off with 44.2% crit rate. As for substats, you will first want energy recharge until you reach your energy requirement, crit rate and damage, attack, and elemental mastery if you're playing a Dendro team. Moving on to weapons, Clorinde has many strong options to choose from. Keep in mind that different calculations might have different assumptions, which may lead to slightly different rankings. Clorinde's best in slot is going to be her signature weapon Absolution. Absolution has a base attack of 674 and a crit damage stat of 44.1%. Through its effect, Absolution further increases crit damage by 20% and increases damage dealt by 16% for 6 seconds when the current bond of life increases, stacking up to 3 times. Other 5-star weapons are also not that far off. Harangepa Kufutsu is usually going to be Clorinde's second best in slot, with other 5 stars, practically identical in terms of damage. Splendor of Tranquil Waters effects don't directly buff Clorinde, but the high crit damage substat still makes it a viable option. I've repeated this many times now, but I have to say this again when it comes to weapons. Clorinde practically starts with 44% crit rate. So if you're using a weapon like Primordial Jade Cutter and even Haran to an extent, you might find yourself overcapping on crit rate with a few crit rate rolls. So, depending on your build, some crit rate weapons may not appear as good as they are here in this ranking. Between both Battle Pass options, the Black Sword is your best 4-star pick. With all weapons at Refinement Rank 1, the Black Sword is the best 4-star option, as it increases normal attack damage. The same also goes with all 4-star weapons at R5. Wolffang is not as good as it increases elemental skill and burst damage bonus, while Clorinde prefers normal attack bonus. Finale of the Deep is going to be your best free-to-play option. Finale of the Deep is second only to the Black Sword. This weapon can give you a lot of attack, and Clorinde can make use of it pretty well. Just as a side note here, if you're playing a Quicken or Dendro team with this weapon at R5, you might want to switch to an Elemental Mastery Sands. Finale of the Deep is not only one of the best 4 stars, but it's also a craftable option. Tukabu Shigura is another free-to-play event weapon, and it's also a decent option to use if you have it. Lion's Roar's effect can increase damage dealt to enemies affected by Pyro or Electro. If you're playing a team where you can keep an Electro aura on your enemies, this weapon is going to be another decent option to use. Overall, Clorinde has many good options, both 4 stars and 5 stars. If you're playing teams aside from Quicken or Hyper Bloom, Elemental Mastery and reaction buffing weapons will perform worse. Moving on to teams, and before going over team comps, let's talk about why you might want to pair Fischl with Clorinde. Fischl is a strong sub-DPS and Electro battery. Using a second Electro character is highly recommended to activate the Electro Resonance and help generate energy for Clorinde. Fischl is one of the better characters fit for this role. Quicken teams help overcome Clorinde's low multipliers and are generally very strong. Alongside Clorinde, you will want a second Electro character, ideally a sub-DPS, who can also trigger the Quicken reaction. Fischl is a great option here, but you can also use other characters like Yae Miko or even Beidou. As for your Dendro character, you have many options to choose from. In a Quicken team, you don't need strong Dendro application, so you can switch out Nahida for other defensive Dendro units such as Kirara, Yao Yao, or Baizhu. As for your last spot, you can go for a flex unit like Kazuha, Zhongli, or even Sucrose, or a second Dendro unit. You can also transform this team into a Quick Bloom team by using Furina in your last spot. Clorinde should be able to trigger Furina's overhealing passive, but it might not be as comfortable to play. As such, you can use a Dendro healer such as Yao Yao or Baizhu, or use Kuki Shinobu in place of Fischl. You can also keep Nahida in this team and use Prototype Amber on her, and it's actually viable to do so in some teams with Furina. In a Hyper Bloom team, you will want strong Dendro application, so Nahida in these teams is going to be very strong. You will also need a strong Hydro applier like Yelan or Singsho. As for your second Electro unit, you can use Fischl or Kuki Shinobu to activate some Bloom cores. As for Electro Charge teams, you can play Fischl alongside Clorinde or even use Beidou in place of Fischl. Alongside them, Furina is a very strong option for your Hydro character. And lastly, you can use a flex unit for your last spot like Kazuha, or go for a second Hydro unit. You can also use Yelan or Singsho in place of Furina. When it comes to Overload, you will always want to play Chevrus in these teams. For your second Electro character, you can use Fischl or even C6 Kuju Sera if you have her. And for your last spot, you can use Shangling, Toma, or Bennett. Shangling might be the best option in terms of damage, but you will struggle a lot with energy issues without Bennett. Toma, with his C6, is a decent option as he increases normal attack damage, and he also shields, which might help with survivability. Bennett is also very good for these sort of teams. Keep in mind that if you're using Kuju Sera as your second Electro unit, Bennett is not going to be as good for your last Pyro unit as he also buffs attack. You might instead opt for Shangling or Toma with Kuju Sera. You can also play a hypercarry team with Clorinde, using either Kuju Sera or Fischl for your second Electro character, alongside Bennett, and lastly a flex unit like Kazuha for your last spot. I don't really recommend playing a hypercarry team over Quicken or other teams, but it is an option, and you can play such a team if you want to do so. And as a reminder, you don't always have to use a defensive last slot in most teams, as Clorinde should have strong self-sustain. But it may not always be the most comfortable way to play her, and having a shield to provide resistance interruption is going to be pretty nice. And finally, Constellations. Clorinde's C1 activates when her normal attacks hit opponents in the Night Vigil state, which summons a Night Vigil shade triggering 2 coordinated attacks, each dealing 30% of attack as electro damage. This effect can only occur once every 1.2 seconds. This damage counts as normal attack damage. This constellation is a good first constellation, which brings around a 15% increase in damage. C2 enhances Clorinde's first passive. When any party member triggers an electro reaction, Clorinde will now gain a 30% of attack increase to her electro attacks during the Night Vigil state, instead of the 20%, and the maximum buff is now 2,700. Clorinde's second constellation is another decent upgrade to her damage. C3 increases elemental skill level by 3, and C5 increases burst level by 3. Constellation 4 increases burst damage by 2% for every 1% of Clorinde's current bond of life percentage. The maximum damage increase is 200%. This again is another decent upgrade to her damage, and it also makes bursting every rotation more viable. C6 is Clorinde's biggest damage upgrade so far. For 12 seconds after entering the Night Vigil state, Clorinde's crit rate is increased by 10% and crit damage by 70%. When Clorinde is about to be hit or uses Impale the Knight, which is the sword lunge attack in the Night Vigil state, with a bond of life equal to or greater than 100%, a Glimbright Shade will be summoned, dealing 200% of attack as electro damage. A Glimbright Shade can be summoned once every second, for up to 6 times. There are also additional effects during the Night Vigil state. Firstly, damage received will be decreased by 80%, and resistance to interruption will be increased. These aforementioned effects will last until the Night Vigil state is over, or after 6 Glimbright Shades are summoned. C6 is obviously going to be a very strong constellation, and her single strongest constellation, but not a necessary one. Most of Clorinde's constellations are pretty nice, but none of them are necessary, and Clorinde is going to be strong enough at C0. And that's all from this guide. This guide was a bit later than usual, but I hope this helped. I'm very excited for Clorinde. She has some of the best animations I've seen yet, and I can't wait to pull for her. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.